Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at the Thermalright AXP90 X47. This is a really small little cooler, which is going to be potentially an amazing upgrade for you if you're looking at building a low profile system, perhaps in a mini ITX chassis. I actually bought this to do some testing on a little rig which I'm building at the moment, which some of you may have already seen from the live stream we've already done. But this is going to be for a mini ITX build, so I want something which is going to be nice, quiet, and actually, best of all, not break the bank. Now, at the moment, this particular version, which we've got here, so this is the kind of grey and silver version, this one is actually retailing on Amazon at the moment for somewhere underneath £18, which I think is fantastic value for money, and actually it does appear to compete relatively well with some other high brand name coolers, such as the Noctuas. You know which one I mean. I'm not going to say the specific model, but it's in a very similar ballpark when it comes to performance. Now, if you want something a little bit bigger and a little bit more powerful, the AXP90 range actually comes in various flavors. So not only do we have an option of 4 different versions of this, being a black, also being a grey, white, etc. There's also a bigger version. So you can get the AXP90-53, and also there is a pure copper version as well. So there's plenty of options there, depending how much you want to spend or what you want to actually put inside your rig, and basically how much room you've got. So this one today is going to be essentially the kind of like the worst possible performance that you're going to get from this particular range of coolers. So we can go through today, do an unboxing, show you what you get, go through some of the problems I actually had with installing this myself, and also we'll take a look at some benchmark results. So I've actually been testing this against a stock Intel cooler. So if you're maybe thinking mini ITX build, only the stock cooler will actually fit. This is actually a little bit smaller, so it's going to give you a bit more headroom, and actually, spoiler alert, it performs much better. Oh, and quieter as well to boot. So first of all, taking a look at the box, very, not a great deal to talk about there, so it tells you exactly what it is. This is part of the classic range of Thermalright coolers. And I've got to say, actually, straight out the gate in 2022, 23, and going into 2024, I don't think Thermalright have been putting a foot wrong. They do some fantastic coolers, very good prices, tons and tons of options available, so they just keep on remanufacturing these with slightly different revisions to them, maybe slightly bigger thin stack, different fans, that kind of stuff. So there's always going to be something for somebody, and they all perform pretty darn well at really, really good prices. So definitely a thumbs up from that. So as I said, this is the AXP90 X47. So the 47 stands for 47 millimeters. That's the height of the fin stack. So if you get the 53 version, it's a few millimeters taller. You get the general idea. On the side of the box, we've got some of the specifications for the fan, weights, all that kind of good stuff. I'll put those on the screen. If you want to read those, please press pause. On the other side of the box, we've got some more of the specifications for the heatsink itself. So let's take a look at the cooler. You've probably seen it already from some B-roll. It's actually a really nice little compact cooler. 4 heat pipes on here, 6mm each. And you've got a nice fan on there again. This is the TL9015, up to 2700 RPM. Although for some reason on my particular setup, this one was only hitting 2300 RPM, and does go down very nice and low, down to those very low RPMs, even down to being stopped, should you wish to, if you want a completely silent system. Removing the CPU fan off here, very easy to do, just spring clips on the sides, a little bit of pressure on there, and those pop off very nicely, giving you access to it for cleaning purposes, etc. On the side, you can see the fins there, so lots of fins there, giving you lots of thermal capacity. Very nice looking, again, 1U, so it's going to fit in those very, very small chassis. And on the bottom, if you take a look, it's got a really nice heatsink area there, so the cold plate section, very large and also rectangular as well, which is going to be helpful if you're going down the Intel line for this, LGA1200, LGA1700, and going forward possibly into LGA1851, which is going to be Intel's next platform. So having that kind of size is going to cover the die in its entirety and have a little bit of overhang as well. For changing the brackets on this, pretty easy to do. 4 screws, just undo those and you can remove these brackets and replace them with either the AM4/AM5 ones or the other Intel ones for 115X or 1200. And that is something which I should say, because of the manufacturing process of this and the instruction manual and all that kind of stuff, it was a little bit confusing for me being an Intel LGA1700 user. It said in the manual that I had to remove these brackets and replace them with the 1700 ones, which surprised me because actually it comes pre-installed now with the 1700 ones. So it does actually have it marked on there, although the other ones don't have any markings on. So I'll go through those shortly to show you what they're like, but the 1700 ones may or may not be pre-attached on your particular unit that you have. Again, it's not the end of the world, it's quite easy to replace. 4 screws and you can swap those out. Going back to the fan, pretty easy to set up, and it's actually got quite a nice long cable on there, which actually might hinder some people, because if you're putting this into a mini ITX enclosure and you haven't got a lot of wiggle room for cable management, it is actually quite a long cable. They could have probably done it half that length and it would have still been ample for most ITX or micro ATX motherboards, to be honest with you. So that, I think, is actually something they've done a little bit too well, and it's also braided as well, giving a little bit more bulk to that cable. So that's enough about the cooler. Let's take a look at the accessories. So you get a backplate. So this is going to be for AMD, and also it's going to be for Intel. Again, when it comes to AM5, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work, because the AM5 section, they might have to do a revision of this. So depending when you're watching this video, they may have already changed it slightly. But the backplate there says AM4. So that basically pushes on the back of the motherboard. And the other side is for your Intel sockets. It's all got plastic coatings on it as well over the metal to protect your motherboard, all that kind of good stuff. So there is your universal backplate. When it comes to swapping out the brackets, you get the AM4 ones, so they look like this. So if you do need to do an AM4 or AM5 setup, then these are the brackets you're going to be wanting to use. If you're on the Intel platform, so LGA115X or LGA1200, then you'll be wanting to use these brackets. This particular set doesn't have any markings on it at all, and they look almost identical to the LGA1700 ones. The only difference on my particular unit is the other one says LGA1700, so that's just one way of working out which one is which. It does come with an installation guide and telling you how everything goes together, which is actually relatively good, although I did find, and I've actually made a separate video on this for the LGA1700 installation, so actually if you do want to see how this is installed on an Intel LGA1700 socket and you're a little bit unsure, then we have got a separate dedicated video for that. But essentially what it comes down to is the fact that obviously the brackets were round the wrong way from what the instructions said, so it's pre-installed with 1700 rather than 1200. But also there are some threaded screws included, which are part of the mounting kit. So you've got a set of 4 of the short threaded versions. So these are basically going to be your kind of default, or if you're using a motherboard in like an ATX form factor or micro ATX, ITX, that sort of thing, where you haven't got a lot of room behind the motherboard tray, you're going to want to use the shorter threaded ones. If you've got a big ATX case, you've got plenty of room, then there are ones with a longer thread. Those also may be useful for going down the AM5 route, because you've got that additional bulk of the retention mechanism there. I will have to try this out on AM5 actually and see how it goes, so look out for a video for that and I'll confirm whether or not it does fit. I think it should do, but I'm not entirely sure, but for all the other sockets, absolutely fine. So that's the two differences. It comes with, sometimes it comes kind of pre-installed in the box with it all sandwiched together, ready to go, in which case it probably comes with the long screws attached already, in which case you're probably going to want to remove those and put the shorter ones in. Regardless of which size screws you put in to actually clamp it to the motherboard, it's the same stuff. So you've got 5 of these little hex nuts. Those are included. There's 5. I think it should always be 5. Maybe it should be 4 and they've just given me a spare because they know what I'm like for dropping stuff, but potentially you'll get a spare as well just in case you lose one. And also it comes with a really handy little knurled wheel with a crosshead on the top, so that is a hex screw, so for tightening those up on the back of the board. If you've got a slightly delicate board, you may want to do it by hand using the knurled side, or alternatively you can use the screwdriver in the crosshead side. Also it comes with some really good thermal paste, so this comes with the Thermalright TF7. This is super good paste, really good, very good conductivity, a little bit thicker than some of the others, so it's a little bit harder to apply, but certainly will be worth doing. So that's it for what you get. I've actually done some testing on this, so I have compared this with the Intel stock cooler on a very basic mini ITX platform. Like I said, we are doing a build in that. And also I've tested it on the Intel i5-12400 processor. The motherboard itself has got thermal limitations because of limited VRM, so we're not getting some of those peak PL2 wattages on there, so it's not really a kind of extreme test. But I think for those of you that are possibly doing a mini ITX build and you're just going for something which has got a little bit of power but isn't going to kind of be too much of a thermal overload, I think you'll find this information quite useful, especially if you are possibly considering using that stock Intel RM1 laminar cooler. So looking at the results here, so we'll look at the highs and lows. So first of all, when it comes to the lowest recorded temperatures, you can see there's roughly a 6 to 8 degree delta between the two. Now the room that we're doing this in is around about 22 degrees Celsius, so take that into consideration if your room is significantly warmer. then obviously do change that. And this was done on an open platform, as you're probably seeing from some of the B-roll already or later on in the video. So there's no other interference. We've got no additional cooling onto VRMs or around the actual motherboard itself. This is basically the cooler on its own doing its thing. So pretty good results there, actually comes in pretty good. And also something which is noticeable is actually the fact that although yes, the temperatures are considerably better, the slight downside is the VRM temperatures. Now, because of the Intel cooler, we've got that really nice downdraft across the entire motherboard, whereas with this, because you've got the blocked in sides, you're only getting airflow exiting from this side and also this side. And due to the way that the actual cold plate is, you're going to want to have it kind of that way on the processor. So your VRMs are going to be either this side or that side, which are unfortunately blocked off. Now, you do get a little bit of overspill from the cooler anyway, but I did notice that the VRM temperatures were ever so slightly higher using this than they were with the Intel cooler, which I think is completely understandable, although obviously the processor temperatures were considerably lower, and that actually translated into some tangible results in Cinebench. So I did a 5-minute loop with Cinebench with both coolers, and the results you'll be seeing on the screen now. And from memory, it was approximately 1,000 points difference. Now, bearing in mind this cooler with the CPU, normally that processor would get somewhere in the region of about 10,000 points in this configuration with this board. So to get around about 11,000 points, I think is a pretty decent jump, and in fact it's about 10%. So to get a 10% improvement in performance on your system just by changing out the cooler, which costs less than 20 quid, I think that's actually a pretty good shout, especially if you're on one of those lower end motherboards that doesn't have any form of overclocking or tweaking abilities. Again, especially on those lower end platforms, I think that is going to be a really good benefit. And of course, there's the noise difference. So I'm going to let you listen to the noise difference now. So first of all, you'll be hearing the Intel RM1 cooler doing the Cinebench test, and you'll be hearing it ramping up as it goes through. And then after that, you'll be hearing the sound test from the Thermalright AXP90. This is the sound of the Intel stock cooler on the Intel i5 12400 on a mini ITX platform, currently running Cinebench. And this is the fan noise. The microphone is approximately 12 to 15 inches away. So now we have the Thermalright AXP90 X47, again approximately about 12 to 15 inches away from the actual test platform, and this is an example of the noise profile. So there you go, hopefully it come through okay. I was actually filming it on my DJI Pocket 2, trying to kind of float around it, but there is a significant difference. The actual noise profile of this is really good. So if you're considering building a mini ITX system, small form factor box, you want to keep it nice and cool, you want to keep it nice and quiet, and more importantly, you don't want to spend an absolute ton of cash. I think this is definitely worth a look. Now, if you are interested in upping the ante a little bit, like I said earlier, you can get the larger versions of this, so the 53mm versions, and also there is that solid copper one, which will have the benefits of being just a large copper block, which is going to be much more thermally efficient. Although realistically, you're only going to expect to see maybe an additional 5 degrees difference. So if you want to spend almost double the money and get a slight improvement in performance, you certainly can do. But I think for most people, if you're looking for a modest ITX system, you want a small compact cooler that doesn't make a lot of noise, this is definitely well worth a look. So let me know what you think about this one in the comments section below. I'm actually really impressed with it, and I think Thermalright are doing all the right things in all the right places at the moment. Again, let us know your thoughts on that in the comments section below. But for now, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.